It was supposed to be a quiet vacation for Sarah and her family. They had rented a cabin deep in the woods, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. They wanted to reconnect with nature and spend some quality time together. But as the sun went down on their first night in the cabin, they heard a strange noise coming from outside. It was a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from all around them. They dismissed it as an animal and went to bed. But the next night, the growling started again. This time, it was louder and more intense. Sarah and her family felt like they were being watched, like something was out there in the darkness, stalking them. They tried to ignore the sounds and go back to sleep, but they couldn't. They heard footsteps outside, rustling in the bushes, and then silence. They huddled together, praying that the night would pass quickly. But the growling and stalking continued every night, becoming more and more persistent. Sarah and her family were afraid to leave the cabin, fearing that whatever was out there would attack them. One night, Sarah decided that they needed to leave. They packed their bags and got into their car, hoping to escape whatever was stalking them. But as they drove down the road, they realized that they were not alone. Something was following them, something that they couldn't see. They sped up, but the creature behind them was faster. They heard it snarling and growling, trying to catch up to them. Sarah and her family were terrified, wondering if they would ever make it out alive. Finally, they reached the safety of a nearby town. They were shaken, traumatized, but alive. They told the locals what had happened, and they were told of the legend of the Skinwalker. The Skinwalker was said to be a malevolent being that had the power to shapeshift into any animal or human form it desired. It was known to stalk its prey, tormenting them with its evil presence. Sarah and her family realized that they had come face to face with the Skinwalker. They had escaped with their lives, but the memory of the creature's growling and stalking would haunt them forever. From that day on, Sarah and her family never returned to the cabin in the woods. They knew that they had been lucky to escape the Skinwalker's grasp, and they didn't want to take any chances. They warned others of the legend, hoping to prevent anyone else from falling victim to the creature's curse. Years passed, and Sarah and her family tried to move on from the trauma of their encounter with the Skinwalker, but the memory of the creature's haunting growls and stalking never left them. One day, Sarah received a call from her cousin who lived in a nearby town. Her cousin had heard strange noises coming from the woods near her house at night. She described the same guttural growls and stalking that Sarah and her family had experienced. Sarah knew immediately what was happening. The Skinwalker had returned, and it was now terrorizing her cousin. She knew that she had to help. Sarah gathered a group of people who were familiar with the legend of the Skinwalker. They armed themselves with weapons and set out to track down the creature. As they entered the woods, they could feel the Skinwalker's presence all around them. They heard the growls, the footsteps, and the rustling in the bushes. But this time, they were not afraid. They were determined to confront the creature and put an end to its reign of terror. They searched for hours until they finally caught a glimpse of the Skinwalker. It was a dark, shadowy figure that moved with incredible speed and agility. They chased after it, firing their weapons and shouting, trying to scare it away. Finally, the Skinwalker disappeared into the darkness, never to be seen again. Sarah and her group had succeeded in driving it away, but they knew that the legend would never truly die. From that day on, Sarah and her family became protectors of the woods, warning anyone who dared to venture into the forest of the Skinwalker's curse. They knew that the creature was still out there, waiting for its next victim. And so the legend of the Skinwalker continued to haunt the woods, reminding everyone that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places. As time went on, Sarah and her family became more and more involved in protecting their community from the Skinwalker's curse. They formed a group of experts who were dedicated to studying and understanding the legend, and they worked tirelessly to warn people of the dangers of the woods. But despite their efforts, there were still those who fell victim to the Skinwalker's curse. Sarah and her family would receive reports of people who had disappeared in the woods, never to be seen again. One day, Sarah received a call from a group of hikers who had gone missing in the woods. She knew that time was running out, and she immediately gathered her team to go search for them. As they entered the woods, they could feel the Skinwalker's presence all around them. The growls and rustling were more intense than ever before, and they knew that they had to act fast. They searched tirelessly for hours until they finally found the hikers, who were huddled together in fear. The Skinwalker had been stalking them, and they had barely escaped with their lives. Sarah and her team escorted the hikers out of the woods, but they knew that they couldn't stop there. They had to find a way to stop the Skinwalker once and for all. They studied the legend and consulted with experts, trying to find any weaknesses or vulnerabilities that they could exploit. Finally, they discovered that the Skinwalker was vulnerable to certain herbs and plants that were found in the woods. They gathered the necessary ingredients and prepared a concoction that they believed would weaken the Skinwalker. They then set out into the woods, determined to confront the creature and put an end to its curse. As they approached the Skinwalker, they could feel its malevolent presence all around them. They threw the concoction at the creature, and it let out a terrible howl of pain and anger. For a moment, it seemed like they had won, but then something unexpected happened. The Skinwalker's body began to twist and contort in ways that defied all logic and reason. It grew larger and more grotesque, and its eyes began to glow with an otherworldly light. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to shake, and the trees started to twist and bend. A powerful force was unleashed, tearing the very fabric of reality itself. Sarah and her team tried to run, but they were caught in the maelstrom. They saw strange shapes and visions, things that their minds couldn't comprehend. The Skinwalker's power had grown too great, and they were helpless against it. Finally, the chaos subsided, and Sarah and her team found themselves in a strange, otherworldly place. The sky was a sickly shade of green, and the ground was covered in a slimy, pulsating substance. And there, in the distance, they saw the Skinwalker, more powerful and terrifying than ever before. It had brought them to its realm, a place of endless horror and madness. Sarah and her team knew that they were doomed. They had underestimated the Skinwalker's power, and now they were trapped in its domain, with no hope of escape. And so they remained, trapped in the Skinwalker's realm, forever lost in the darkness. The Skinwalker had claimed yet another victim, and its power continued to grow, waiting for the next fool who would dare to challenge it.